people automatically say, oh, America lose the reserve currency position that it's got. And that's what would be a terrible thing. And I don't think that's true. If America couldn't just print confetti willy-nilly and push it all over the place, push it all around the world, would that be bad for the American economy, or would it be good? Would it be good for the political realities of a runaway government spending money like a drunken sailor? It'd probably be good if they had a little bit of fiscal discipline, wouldn't it?
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty in Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for August 4th through August 11th, 2025, while supplies last. First this week, backdated 1-ounce Canadian silver maples are just $2.89 over spot, the lowest premium we've seen on maples in years. Next, backdated 1/10-ounce Platinum Britannia are only $34 over melt per coin. Backdated gold 1-ounce Britannia are just $59 over spot per ounce. And finally, 100-ounce PAMP Silver Bars are only $1.89 over spot per ounce. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with Liberty in Finance. And back with us today is our good friend Clem Chambers from anewfn.com. Clem, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks very much for getting the name right. It's always a mouthful. I've got this wonderful thing with the URLs. I always make terrible ones that nobody can remember or pronounce.
We'll put a link in the description of this video here so people get that right as well. I did want to ask, because also you are a Forbes contributor and been writing a lot on Forbes.com there about de-dollarization and also kind of the status of the U.S. dollar. Now, the U.S. dollar is obviously the world reserve currency right now. And you've talked about how this is a blessing and a curse, actually. So can you explain the disadvantages that the U.S. has because of its reserve currency status?
First of all, the argument goes, oh, all the great empires have been the reverse and been the reserve currency over time, and they've all lost that reserve status and they've all lost their position as the number ones. Well, one doesn't necessarily follow the other, because they became the reserve currencies because they had all the money. And then, they didn't have all the money for one reason or another, and therefore they lost that position. It wasn't the other way around. They didn't lose the reserve currency status and therefore they lost all their money. So if you look at France and if you look at the UK, for example, and that were the reserve currencies back in the day, that was actually gold and silver. So there was no issue about printing confetti like today. So they just had all the money, and therefore their money was all over the place with the head of the ruler on it. And everybody thought, yeah, well, these guys, it's good gold, it's good silver, we'll have that. And so the reason it became the reserve was just purely by the fact there's so much of it. Now, with America being the reserve currency, we're not dealing with precious metals of known and generally agreed value. We're dealing with confetti. I like to call it confetti because that's what it is. They print it. Well, they don't even bother printing it anymore. They just stick it on your hard drive and tell you you've got it. So, money is a very different thing from when these reserve currencies were back in the day made out of precious metals. So that's the starting point. Now, if you want to have the reserve currency, you've got to have more of it than anybody else. And America was in that situation at the end of the Second World War. And frankly, before that as well, after the First War. And therefore, everybody looked to the richest country and took their currency as the leading thing. Well, as time passed, it went from gold-backed to not gold-backed to being confetti. And the argument is, it's a wonderful thing because you can just print confetti and everybody takes it. Isn't that great? You could just, go crazy. You've got the ability to print your own money and everybody thinks it's marvelous. So it doesn't matter that it's confetti. It's marvelous and everybody takes it and you can spend it. And isn't that great? But actually what it means is that you have to run, in practical terms, a budget, a trade deficit. So you've got a trade deficit and, that's kind of okay to a certain extent. But if you get too big a deficit, then your confetti goes out to the people that are sending you, plastic rubbish in this day and age. And before you know it, the people who sold you all that plastic rubbish come round your house with all your money and says, I bought your house, or I've bought that farmland, or I bought that asset in your country. So by having a trade deficit, if it's too large, you are basically just hemorrhaging your wealth to the rest of the world. And this is what America has done. Now, on the flip side of it, you can run budget deficits because you can export your bonds to people that want them, and they will, buy your bonds off you for their currencies. Or alternately, they'll buy they'll take your confetti, ship your load of plastic and rubbish, and then buy your bonds with it and get an interest on that money that they made off you. So if you use it to influence the world and to sell some of your currency abroad, up to a certain extent, that's good. But if you let that run away with you and you'll start to run massive deficits, then you're going to basically go broke. So there's a little bit of it is fine, but too much of it is pretty devastating. If you look at America, which has run these huge trade deficits for such a long time now, you can see the damaging impact of having to have these deficits in the first place. You see, have a deficit and everyone goes, oh, that's good, we're getting some free money here. And then the politicians say, yes, we'll spend that. Oh, have some of our treasury bills, lend us some money because we're going to spend. And then your deficits run away with you. You lose your industry because you're exporting, your industry becomes printing money, not making things. And you get in a situation where you get hollowed out. And, if you look at the UK and you look at the US, there's a big argument to be made that they've hollowed out their industrial base. They've hollowed out their economy because they've been running these massive deficits. And ultimately, if you are, buying and spending more than you earn, you'll go broke. And when people look at the budget deficit and they look at the trade deficit, they look at it and they go, oh, we're going to go broke here. And yes, if they carry on, they will go broke. So you have to look then at this idea of being the reserve currency, because you have to push the money out there. Otherwise, there's not enough of it to drive the global economy, because your money is the unit of transaction, is the central unit. Now, you could say, well, it's all well and good. But who else would be the reserve currency? And, is there anybody else? Well, the Chinese have twice as much of their currency in dollar terms as America has. So it has actually more global currency, more currency out there in the world, should it allow it to go out there, than America does. But funnily enough, they don't want to be the reserve currency because they want to ship you their plastic and you to ship them your confetti, so they can take your confetti and go back to your place and buy it. Because effectively, they're taking product, getting your confetti, which they can show up in your country and say, I've got your confetti, thank you very much, I'll buy that building, or I'll buy that farmland, or I'll buy that company. So that closing of the loop is what is so damaging. And if you look at what Trump is trying to do, it's basically trying to stop that, stop having this big trade deficit. Well, if you turn off the spigot of your money going into the world via that process, then you are people are going to say, well, there's not enough dollars. We've got a dollar shortage. I'm sure many of your viewers have heard people say, oh, there's a dollar shortage. In the past, for example, during the Euro crisis, there was a dollar shortage. There wasn't enough dollars to make the merry-go-round go round. The trouble is, if you are making the merry-go round, you are by definition pushing your money into the world, and in return, they're going to have to ship stuff to you, and then you're going to have a trade deficit. So it can go from a little bit of a blessing to a gigantic curse. And if you think that the trade deficit and all these tariffs that have been put in is a solution to the American trade deficit, well, the reason there has been one is because it's a reserve currency. So, how does America keep the reserve currency if it's not going to have a big trade deficit? That's an open question. And maybe the solution is just not to be it anymore. Well, if you're not printing your confetti so the government can blow money counting trees to, $100 million a year counting trees and all the other stuff it gets up to, and it can afford to do it because they're buying your bonds because you're the central. Well, you're going broke that way. You're leaning on being the reserve currency to finance your lifestyle, which is beyond your means. And ultimately, that means you go broke. So, the reason China doesn't want to be the reserve currency is it means that it would have to stop being a country which is exporting more than it's importing. And it's got currency controls to stop that very thing. Because if there wasn't currency controls in China, all those yuan and all those renminbis would go flying out into the world. And they don't want that. They want to keep it inside. So if you think, well, Japan, that they haven't ever been the reserve currency of the world. If you look at Germany, they've never been the reserve currency of the world. The UK hasn't been it for a long time. So if you look at all those powerful economies, they don't have this exorbitant privilege, and they don't seem to need it. So when you think that this exorbitant privilege is forcing America, has forced America to run these huge trade deficits so that the government can sell lots of bonds, i.e. borrow money for what it wants to get up to, it could be an exorbitant curse. So, it's a sacred cow. To say that is so contrarian. I mean, there'll be a load of people saying, oh, no, I went to university and got a degree in economics. It's a wonderful thing. But I look at this sacred cow and I go, maybe it's not such a good thing. Why doesn't China want to do that? It's got more cash in the world than America has ×2, or it's 4 times as many people. So half as much money for each Chinese guy. But nonetheless, it's got twice as much cash. So it's in an actual financial position to say, hey, Americans, we want to be that. It doesn't want to be that, does it? That's the simple answer.
If we do see the US dollar lose its reserve currency status, or at least this huge trade deficit coming to an end, what kind of impact is that going to have on the average person in the US?
Well, if America is supporting being the global reserve currency because it wants to throw its weight around, and, it's basically dissipated a large amount of wealth doing that. And I don't think many people disagree that America spent fortunes being the global policeman, being the monopole of power. Well, that's cost. And that's been a cost. And when you think of that cost, and when you look at the government deficit, which is a result of those costs, or many of them anyway, I mean, it's said that Iraq and Afghanistan cost America 7 or 8 trillion. I mean, it might actually be more than that now. So that's about a third of the national debt has been doing those things. Okay. So, if this exorbitant privilege, by the way, that's what the French called it. And so, if you want to think that's not a good idea, you can focus on the fact it was what the French said it was. But anyway, if it isn't such a benefit and it's turned into such a liability, then what's the loss of it going? Yeah, I mean, pretty much anybody is looking at America going, it's spending too much. It's got too big a fiscal budget and deficit, and it's got too big a trade deficit. That's got to change. Well, first of all, it seems like the politicians are not in a mind to stop spending more and more and more. Well, if it didn't have the ability to just push out its debt into the world willy-nilly, it would have to kind of take a different tack, wouldn't it? But the other thing to think about is that the dollar is incredibly strong. I know a lot of your viewers will go, oh, the dollar's finished, the dollar's going to go, it's going to be gold and all that. But the dollar is very, very, very strong. It's almost, in a way, historically strong. I mean, if you look at it against the yen, and the yen was like 105 to the dollar only a couple of years ago, it's now 150, give or take. If you look at various other currencies which have been much, much stronger against the US dollar, say 5-10 years ago, you can see that the dollar is very strong. And, if the dollar is very strong, it's hard to export, isn't it? And the whole point about the way that countries have gone about competing is by making their currency competitive. Well, if you've got a very strong dollar, that one way to lower it is to take a little bit of a back seat. Now, you can't throw your geopolitical weight around if you're no longer no longer the reserve currency. So is this dollar being the reserve currency, is that purely political? So that, the people in power in America can throw their weight around, which we all know politicians like to do, or is it good for the American people? I think that's a very open question. And people automatically say, oh, America lose the reserve currency position that it's got. And that's what would be a terrible thing. And I don't think that's true. And for a weaker dollar, which we're going to get anyway because interest rates are coming down, if you said, well, if America couldn't just print confetti willy-nilly and push it all over the place, push it all around the world, would that be bad for the American economy, or would it be good? Would it be good for the political realities of a runaway government spending money like a drunken sailor? It'd probably be good if they had a little bit of fiscal discipline, wouldn't it? So overall, these things in the end, economics takes care of it. It forces the hand. And while everyone's saying that the BRICS are going to create another reserve currency, that's total nonsense. The currency of India, the currency of Brazil, the currency of Russia, no one's going to tie their trade to those things. They go all over the place. The dollar is actually, when you look at the dollar, and people say, gold is stable and it's wonderful money. And you look at the dollar, well, look at the volatility of gold and look at the volatility of the dollar. And you'll see the dollar from day to day is really quite low volatility in comparison with almost any other asset. I like gold for other reasons. I like hard assets for other reasons. I do think we're going to have heightened inflation for quite some time, up there in the 4 and 5%, probably. So I'm no big fan of the dollar as a marvelous thing. And I think that with these seismic changes that we're undergoing right now, that you might see a little bit of backpedaling going on about the dollar being the reserve global currency.
So in your view, it seems like the dollar is still the best option out there for a lot of countries because of its low volatility, even better than gold right now?
Well, I mean, you can't really transact economically through the banking system with gold. So, I don't, at the moment, the way that it works is the dollar is basically the piping for all the financial world. And that's the idea. Yeah, and it's the global reserve currency. So everybody, when they want to buy something, goes to dollars and then goes to wherever it is they want to go to. So if you're in a Malaysian, you go from the ringgit to the dollar to buy gold. So it's central in that sense. But there's also a sense that it's maintained because it's so valuable to America, and that it's a massive asset to America in terms of economics. And that's what I'm challenging. And that's what I'm saying, oh, really? It might have been. But now it seems like a massive liability. Now it seems to be generating all sorts of bad behavior, for example, in government. It's enabling these huge deficits. Well, it's not the scale of the debt deficit and debts, although they are pretty significant. It's the direction. And they're not slowing down. So they're going to go up and up and up and up and up. And at some point, it's going to break. Now, if there wasn't the ability for America to, encourage people sell their debt to the rest of the world, then that spending would probably not be like it is. So, it's a temptation to behave like the South American countries do. And that temptation has gone from a small temptation to a large temptation to the fact that it can't be changed. I mean, remember that this new government came around. It was going to stop all this. It was going to stop all the deficits. It was going to cut back on government spending. It was going to do all that. Well, that's not happening anymore, is it? That's all gone quiet because, a lot of people depend on that merry-go-round going around. So, and that is enabled by America having the global reserve currency. So it's an enabler for something that could be catastrophic. So yes, it probably was an asset. Yes, it could be an asset, but if it's enabling runaway government spending, that's a catastrophic liability. And that's kind of what I'm pushing forward. The other thing is, if Trump does what he's doing, which is balancing the trade deficit, well, the money's not necessarily going to be pushed out there enough into the world. So that will be interesting to see how the flow of dollars into the global economy to keep there being enough dollars in the system would be maintained. I mean, would America end up lending the dollars to the rest of the world? I mean, it's an interesting question. If America didn't have a trade deficit, what would happen to it as a global reserve currency? The whole point of running a deficit is so you can have that. And if you don't run a deficit, does it go away naturally on its own? So, as I say, it's a sacred cow. And when I see sacred cows and everybody parroting how marvelous this thing is and how devastating it will be to lose, I like to think about it. And then I'd like to examine that basic principle, because it's very important. Because if that is the basic principle and it's wrong, like back in 2019, when everybody was saying it was going to be deflation. Deflation, we're going to have deflation. Oh, such deflation. And I was writing for what? What are you people talking about? We're going to have inflation. You know, if people don't realize that inflation and or deflation is generated by governments on purpose, and they think somehow it's a magical thing, pixie dust that suddenly falls out the sky. If they don't realize that it's the only people that can create inflation and deflation are governments, and they do it on purpose, then they're going to have a very odd model. Or maybe I have the odd model, but you know, if you need to have a solid model to make money, and you need to examine the key tent poles of the economic models that people are using. Because if you get the wrong direction on the market, you're going to be not in a happy way, are you?
And we've talked about in the past why you were bullish on gold, and obviously one of the reasons here you're mentioning how we're going to continue to see inflation going forward. You recently, though, wrote a piece on platinum and palladium. I'd like to get your perspective on that, because we've seen a huge rise in platinum this year, about 40% or so. It's pulled back slightly since you wrote that article, but your current perspective on the platinum market and palladium as we've seen really this historic rise this year.
Well, if your viewers are wondering what the devil I was talking about the dollar being the global reserve currency and how mad I must be, I will refer them back to when I was calling platinum going up only a few months ago when it was 950. And, you know, the mad bloke called platinum and palladium from the rooftops. And so, you know, there you go. There's some backing to what I'm saying, and that it's not completely, you know, mag. Now, platinum and palladium, to me, it's just incredible, because platinum and palladium are very important tools. They're precious metals. Precious metals are in vogue, and they've been really, really out of fashion. But the bottom line is they only mine 200 tons of each one of those a year, 200 tons. So gold, 3,200 tons. Silver, 25,000 tons. So if you look at gold, 3,200 tons, you look at platinum, 200 tons. 200 tons is basically zero. And I keep saying this because 200 tons is just a small amount. Yeah, and a little bit is made in fact, America is still importing platinum and palladium, or maybe it's just palladium, from Russia. Doesn't matter about the sanctions, doesn't matter about the Ukraine-Russia war. It is so vital that America is still importing it from Russia, because there's only 3 places you can get it: Russia, South Africa, and a bit of it in America. Okay, 200 tons. Now, the reason it's been out of fashion is because everybody was saying that the internal combustion engine is going away and nobody's going to need these catalysts anymore. You know, there's going to be all those cat converters going to be crushed up, and you're going to get piles and piles of ingots of platinum and palladium. Now, could happen. It was going to happen. But the thing about platinum and palladium is it's a strategic and critical metal, and it's used for things like fuel cells. You can't make really good fuel cells without it, and it's used in all sorts of chemistry, and it is a ameliorator of environmental pollution. Now, the thing that's happened cannot be underestimated. People need to think about this, and this is a logical flow of it. AI, okay? And then we'll go, oh yeah, but AI, the second thought is there is no second place. If you are smarter than somebody else, that other person is toast in a conflict. Okay? So AI, there's no second place. So no country can be second place in AI. Now, AI is energy. That's all it is. It's those machines from NVIDIA and AMD, and you pump energy through them, and that energy gets turned into heat and AI. That's it. Energy, heat, and AI. There's no second place. There's no natural limit to the demand for AI coming up. So there's no natural limit to the energy requirements that states will need, will want, will go out and get, which is why you're reading about coal mines being reopened, why you're reading about nuclear power stations, which were only a few years ago, Satan incarnate nuclear power. I mean, why is it all of a sudden such a wonderful thing? Well, that's basically one of the few ways you can actually get huge untapped amounts of energy out of nowhere is nuclear power, right? And you need it for AI because there's no second place. So there's no natural limit to the demand that there will be for AI. So there's no natural limit for the demand of energy. Well, the trouble is something needs to remediate all the pollution that's going to cause, and that's platinum and that's palladium. And there's only 200 tons of each made every year. And it's not like, oh, well, you know, there's a hill over there with millions of tons of it. Well, yes, fine, we'll go get that. There's hardly any of it out there. And so if that isn't enough, if you look at platinum to gold ratio, say 15 years ago, it was 1-to-1. So if it was the old ratio, when my hair wasn't quite so grey, it would actually be $3,000 an ounce right now. Yeah. If you go back another few years, for when I was running around in short trousers, it was 2-to-1 to gold. It was twice as expensive as gold. And actually, if you look at palladium, even a few years ago, it was $3,500 an ounce, and now it's down at $1,000. Only a few years back. Okay? And they don't make much of it. So when it squeezes, it's just going to go, you know, ape. So in a nutshell, that's why I'm particularly excited by palladium and platinum, because it is the industrial catalyst. And I work in chemistry these days, so I get you know, soft spots for catalysts, and it is the environmental catalyst. And on top of that, it's in things like fuel cells. Now you can make fuel cells without platinum, but if you want to put a fuel cell in a car or a bus or something that really needs to go oomph, it has to be platinum. So it's yet another application in energy for fuel cells. And let's just say none of this happens, you know, AI is naturally limited and no one's ever going to need it. It's not going to be the thing that turns the world upside down. Yeah, it's still all about fuel cells and the hydrogen economy that's coming. And the hydrogen economy has a big use, as in big use for platinum, and there's SMALL amounts of it. So anyway you look, the thing about CAC converters are going away, that's no longer the story. The story is now, where are we going to get all this platinum we're going to need from? I mean, you can look at the same thing with copper, of course, but copper, there's a vast amount of copper being made. There's mountains of it, but it will go ape as well, but it probably a few more years before that goes ape. But everybody around there goes, copper, there's just not enough of it for all this stuff. Where are we going to get it from? But it is kind of replaceable. And yes, it will go through the roof. But here, right now, there's just not a replacement for platinum and palladium. And they don't make much of it. And, you know, it has, the story has turned from, we're going to use platinum for, where are we going to get it from? So that's why I'm very bullish on it.
Well, Clem, we really always appreciate your time. As always, if our viewers are interested in learning more, they can go to anewfn.com, which is in the link in the description. Tell us a little about your work there.
Well, I'm about to launch a financial website come September. And, you know, I've done, in my past, I have built some pretty significant financial websites in Europe and America. So I'm going to have produced for soon launch a new website, which will be doing some fun things. And it's, you know, I look at, and I'm sure your viewers do too, you look at all the websites for financial information out there on the web. They're all 25 years old. I mean, they're all ancient. I mean, there's really nothing new since 2005. So, you know, I've decided to see if I can do something a little bit more modern, a little bit more exciting, a little bit more useful, actually, because it's all about making money. You know, it's not about having, you know, wild headlines that don't turn into anything. It's all about having the tools to have a little bit of an edge. So that's where we're going. And, you know, in the modern way these things are done, we have a wait list. And if people drop their email on it, they'll be informed when they can come in, because we won't be able to open it fully to everybody the day one, otherwise they'll blow us up, won't they? So we'll be letting the first few thousand people in tranches, effectively. So that will kick off in September. So if they want to be on the list, they'll be there. They can also, people can follow my outbursts on X. I'm at Clem Chambers there, and you can read me on Forbes. I've been writing for them now for 25 years, so long that my contract is written in Latin. And so, they can actually read what I've been writing for many, many years back and see how right or otherwise I've been. And I think I've got a pretty blooming good record of being right and calling the unexpected. So, I'm reasonably good at predicting the future, unlike a load of people that seem to like to predict the past. I like to, put my my stamp on things to say, this is going to happen. And you can read all my platinum stuff and all my gold stuff. I mean, you've got gold readers. I called this breakout, and I'm not a gold bug. I've been stacking wildly over the last couple of years. It must be said, I do hold too much gold, silver, and platinum, palladium. I love it because it's the direction for me is written. But up to that point, I'm an equities guy. I like equities, not commodities. Commodities fills me with horror and terror. But you gotta trade what you see, and as I said, I called the gold thing. There it is, go on Forbes and read it and then say, you did as well. Wow. So I'm very pleased to be on your show. And one more thing though, I will say this to people: what I say should be just raw material for your own research. I'm not necessarily right. I'm not necessarily wrong. I'm probably more right than wrong, I hope. But, what I said today, just now, most people go, what? And so it's a very good starting point to do your own research on that and see whether you agree or not, because it's a critical point. The dollar it drives everything. There's only one thing that drives the markets more than Mr. Trump right now, and that is the dollar and interest rates. So, if you can get a good handle on that, that will give you an edge, and everybody needs an edge.
And your take on gold right now, right before we wrap up here, I mean, we've had quite a long consolidation over the last few months. Do you think it's about to break out again?
Well, the thing to think about with the markets is that it's not about what's going on now. It's what is about to go on. So you've got this sideways channel. So it's reached an equilibrium point on what is known, and what is unknown is whether there's going to be peace or war. So the call is, do you think it's going to be calm in 6 or 9 months' time? Do you think everything's going to work out? I mean, is Mr. Trump going to have a chat with Vlad and sort it all out in the next week? And it's all going to be fine? Or is it just going to be an ever-increasing spiral of tension? Now, the elephant in the room, and a lot of people have spotted this particular elephant, is the US versus China. Now, if any parties have got any sense, that's not something that's going to develop. But if it does, all those things will go off the dial. I mean, if America or China escalates this Cold War, which we're in, then, certain things will happen to assets that will be gigantic. Now, if it doesn't, it won't. Personally, and put it this way, I've got a pile of gold and I ain't selling it. And it looks like a rest, and it doesn't look like a end of the run. Now, there's all sorts of maths behind whether it is or whether it isn't. You can use if you're technically mathematically minded, but it looks like a pause to me, and it looks like it's waiting for news. And the news, we won't get the news. You'll just see it in the chart. We'll get it 3 months later. Yeah. So just watch that chart, and if it suddenly goes, breakout, well, it's on its way to 4,500, and that's kind of what I'm expecting. That is in my mind, what's going to happen. It's going to go to, I said this actually the best part of almost a year ago. I said, it's going to 3,500, could go to 5. If it goes to 5, we're all going to be really unhappy. So, for pessimists with gold, I think they're positioned where they should be positioned. And if you're an optimist, then, you can be optimistic about it and buy some more NVIDIA and sit there buy and hold for the rest of your life. But I think that we're in for cycles of craziness. How else can you put it? more of what we've been seeing this year for the next 3.5 years. And therefore, I think that there's a tailwind on gold, and there's huge tailwinds on platinum, palladium, and therefore this is it's an equilibrium point. It's absolutely hit an equilibrium point. Now, if you want to judge it, the way to go, the classical way to go, is you put a box around it. You say, this is the volatility. This is just people messing about. But if it goes here, it's going down. If it goes here, it's going up. And that's what you do. And classically, if it goes up enough to that point where you're comfortable that it's no longer in that crazy channel, you buy more. I mean, I'm a DCA guy. I just buy gold every time I get an itch, which is regularly. But for those people that want to trade it, you draw those lines. Below this it's going down, above this is going up, and that's how you play it. And it looks. I mean, governments are buying it. Everybody I meet in authority is either saying, "Oh, well, it's a bit sticky," or they're saying, "We're already in a war." I mean, and they're the guys that run this place. And if you are, I mean, I want to know whether Britain's buying gold. It probably isn't, but Poland is. China is. Oh, I wonder why that is then. Gold is for war, and as long as there's increase in global tension, then gold will go up in real terms. If there's a slacking in global tension, it will go down. It's that simple. So it's all about the level of global tension, and that pivot, well, it actually pivots around multiple places, but the main places it pivots around is Ukraine, Russia, Israel, and Iran, give or take, and China and America over Taiwan. And you could throw in for a little bit of added spice, India and Pakistan. And then who would have thought that Vietnam and Cambodia, or Thailand, sorry, and Cambodia would have a punch up? You know, it's just like, you see this and you go, well, it seems to be a fashion to mess about like this. So why wouldn't you be holding gold? Why wouldn't you be holding it? Or silver, or any precious metal? If you want to watch, have an early warning sign of whether gold will break out, or something to watch to see whether gold is looking potentially good in the future, look at the American military stocks, because they haven't done so well. If you look at European ones, they've gone through the roof, obviously, because they've been told to sort out, Vlad, or be prepared to be on their own to sort out Vlad. So all those stocks have gone mad. The American ones haven't gone particularly wild. But if they were to go wild, suddenly they're moving 2 or 3% a day, then, something's probably coming.
Fantastic. Once again, Clem, thank you so much for your time, as always, and God bless.
Thank you. Great to be on.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for August 4th through August 11th, 2025, while supplies last. First this week, backdated 1-ounce Canadian silver maples are just $2.89 over spot, the lowest premium we've seen on maples in years. Next, backdated 1/10-ounce Platinum Britannia are only $34 over melt per coin. Backdated gold 1-ounce Britannia are just $59 over spot per ounce. And finally, 100-ounce PAMP Silver Bars are only $1.89 over spot per ounce. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.